Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers of this international diaspora and community here in Birmingham. Birmingham, which has been a center both of pro-slavery activity and of anti-slavery activity in that era. Welcome in your large or small gathering, and thank you for coming. My respect to you. This is a very important event for me, personally, politically, and historically. It is the first launching of this book, the first publication of this book outside of Guyana. But that is only a small part of it. I want to thank Mr. Robert Lalji, Brother Robert, as I call him, for his faith and belief in this book and its future. I want to thank him very much for the effort he put into producing it. I want to thank also Brother Nigel Westmus, a professor from Guyana, a former activist and supporter of the Working People's Alliance, very close to Walter Rodney in the educational work. I want to thank him for publishing Day Clean Global, which is a sort of resurrection of an important instrument in the anti-dictatorial media of those days, and he keeps it coming out despite his workload. He is a younger activist that came into the movement a little before Sister Karen D'Souza, who got into it when her English teacher, Rupert Rupnarayan, was arrested in 1979. Nigel Westmus was there about a year earlier. And I want to name some other women quickly before you get the impression that they were not around. They were very central to the civil rebellion. And I name Andaye, Bonita Harris, Diane Matthews, and I name them because they have been publicly recorded. I do not want to jeopardize anyone's position. We live in a very vindictive political atmosphere in Guyana. Apart from that, I want to thank Dr. and Professor Clem C. Charan of Guyana, another national treasure, whom I have learned to call brother. He is a historian of no mean standing, and like Walter Rodney, he is a historian whose pen did not sleep in his hand. He consented to write the foreword to this humble little book, and I was most overwhelmed by his generosity. By doing so, I think writing the foreword to a non-academic piece of writing, he really lends importance to it and gives it a potential beyond its original possibilities. I thank him. Then there were so many others that I thank. Now, let me at once get down to why this book was written by me, and a much older activist than Walter Rodney, of a previous political generation. In the late 40s, many of us in Guyana became involved in this international collapse of the colonial system and the anti-colonial movement, led off, of course, by India in that classical anti-colonial movement of Asia and of the British Empire, with such remarkable contributions and contributors well known to the world. It was an inspiration to all of us. It was followed a decade after 1947 by Ghana in 1957. So there you had Ghana and India close to various segments of the Guyanese population. And no doubt we got some of our inspiration from, much of our inspiration from India in the first place, and from Ghana. We in those days saw ourselves as champions of the people. You know, the whole point was vote for us and we will fight for you. I hear it in the United States of America now, and there's a kind of depressive air about it because we went beyond that in Guyana. We were the champions of the people who would represent the people as in one form or another. I remember drafting a flyer for a fundraising event in Buxton in 1948 or thereabout, and I wrote, under the patronage of Honorable Dr. Chenny Jagan, the people's young champion. Those are words I had to write because this is how we saw them, and later ourselves. And 30 years after this, or rather 2 decades after that, about 1974, comes in Walter Rodney from Tanzania in Africa and from the world, this young brother who has fought with the oppressed in any country and every country where he has lived. He returned, and although the energy of the 40s was still lingering, still there, championship energy, you know, and it had, in essence, exhausted itself. It was no longer really relevant what the country required, but we did not know until Walter Rodney came, and in his quiet way, without ringing a bell and saying, "I am here," he slipped into the Working People's Alliance, began to teach publicly in the open air, and began to inspire us with a new, dangerous doctrine of self-emancipation, self-empowerment, and community empowerment. And I must say that mainly through the vehicle of what we call our 2 symbols of the new politics, Rupert Rupnarine and Walter Rodney himself. We call them the symbols of the new politics. And they were foremost on the platform. Along with them, we had not only Brother Nigel, but people like Takuma Ogonseye, Clive Thomas, some others, persons of note, Brian Rodway, that remarkable and very creative artist, and many others. Some who never named themselves in the public area, but Takuma certainly did. And because of these vehicles, what began to happen was that a new kind of authority, apart from the state, a new kind of public authority began to present itself in Guyana in a very public way. And this is part of what we call the civil rebellion. It was fighting for the right to vote and fighting against the dictatorship that seemed to be spreading itself all over. In this we joined